The Creator is above the law. You know who Dismas was?
No.
He was the thief on the cross next to Jesus. And he says to him, you're going to be okay. This day, you'll be with me. Unbaptized, criminal, all that stuff. So the lawmaker is above the law.
What happens when a Hollywood legend stops playing by the rules and starts speaking the truth? Mel Gibson, the Oscar-winning actor and director, has never been one to stay silent. From the brutal realism of The Passion of the Christ to raw, unfiltered interviews, Gibson has worn his faith on his sleeve, even when it cost him. In an industry that once applauded him, his boldness has made him a target. But then, he stopped apologizing. He didn't just challenge Hollywood's secular norms, he waged open war against them. Why would someone at the peak of fame risk everything to expose the very system that built him? What Mel did next shook the industry and made millions lean in to listen. Mel Gibson's journey through Hollywood hasn't just been fascinating, it's been fearless. From directing The Passion of the Christ to backing The Sound of Freedom, Mel has become more than just an icon. He's become a man on a mission. And unlike many stars who play by the rules, Mel isn't afraid to call out the powerful, even if it means paying the price. During a candid conversation with Joe Rogan, Mel revisited the firestorm that followed The Passion of the Christ. Rogan pointed out the criticism, and Mel didn't deny it. The backlash was overwhelming. But what shocked him most was why the backlash existed in the first place. After all, it was just a film about faith, or was it? According to Mel, the film struck deeper. It wasn't just about the final hours of Jesus. It was about all of us. About the weight of collective guilt, the need for redemption, and the universal cry for grace. For Mel, raised in a devout Catholic home, this was more than a movie. It was a message. But Hollywood didn't take it lightly. Mel noticed something few dare to say out loud. Christianity, more than any other belief system, seemed to provoke a uniquely hostile reaction in the industry. In a world that celebrates inclusion and spiritual diversity, why was this one faith treated like a threat? He posed the uncomfortable question, is it because of its history, its connection to colonialism, or is it because Christianity demands something that makes people uncomfortable? Accountability. Whatever the reason, Mel refused to stay quiet. He spoke openly about how many dismiss the gospel as myth. But to him, it's history, verifiable, documented, and echoed by sources outside the Bible. And perhaps most compelling of all, the apostles who spread its message didn't gain power or riches. They gained persecution, and still, they never recanted. Because as Mel says, who dies for a lie?
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power? So I regard the fact that I was able to appeal to something greater than myself to help me and actually stop me doing that. I think that's a miracle.
Some people fall and stay down. But Mel Gibson, he fell hard and found faith deeper than ever before. He's never sugarcoated his past. Addiction nearly destroyed him. Alcohol and drugs had him in a chokehold, and nothing, no fame, no success could break him free. Until he reached for something greater, something beyond himself. For Mel, beating that darkness wasn't willpower. It was a miracle. He speaks of his imperfections with raw honesty, calling himself more flawed than most. But in that brokenness, he found what many miss, the transformative power of grace. He believes failure isn't final, and redemption is always possible. As he reflects on his life, Mel sees it like a play. While some are still in Act 2, he says with a half smile, I'm well into Act 3. But it's not just aging he's thinking about, it's eternity. What comes next? For him, there's no doubt. There is something more after this life, and how we live today echoes into forever. Forgiveness, redemption. These aren't just poetic words for Mel. They're pillars of his faith and sources of peace after so much pain. And clearly, people are listening. His appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, where he shared this deeply personal perspective, has been watched over 10 million times. For many, it was more than an interview. It was a testimony, a modern-day gospel message broadcast to millions. But just when you think the story is all faith and redemption, it takes a darker turn. Because Mel's journey through Hollywood didn't just test his spirit, it opened his eyes. He began revealing strange, unsettling things about life in Los Angeles, particularly in the heart of the entertainment world. In one chilling story, Mel recalls a conversation with actor Michael Murphy. Comparing New York and LA, Murphy said, "In New York, someone might mug you. In LA, it's like they want to sacrifice you. That stopped Mel cold. "What do you mean?" he asked. Murphy only answered, "You'll find out." And Mel did. When he arrived in LA in his mid-20s, he was flooded with strange, paranoid thoughts. But they weren't just nerves. The city felt off, like something unspoken hung in the air. A culture everyone sensed but no one explained. Hollywood, he said, felt like one of those creepy small towns in movies. You walk into a bar and the whole room falls silent. Or someone warns you, "Don't go near the house on the hill." He couldn't shake the sense that something was deeply wrong. So the question is, was he paranoid? Or was he seeing something the rest of us missed?
I was in my mid-20s.
Right.
The first time I really came over here. I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
Weird town, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them and they tell you don't go to the house on the hill. And that couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you were exactly on track.
Have you ever trusted your gut, only to doubt it later? Mel Gibson did, and then he found out. He was right all along. There were moments in his youth when Mel felt like he was losing his grip on reality. He dismissed his own instincts, chalked them up to paranoia or overthinking. But time and experience proved otherwise. His darkest suspicions? Many turned out to be chillingly close to the truth. Looking back, he describes his 20s as a blur of pressure, power, and illusions. One moment he was just a rising actor, the next. He was swallowed by a machine of money, manipulation, and silence. Eventually, it became too much. Mel realized he didn't just need a break from Hollywood. He needed a break from himself. And so, he walked away. He left behind the red carpets for dirt roads. He retreated to a quiet life in the country, not to hide, but to heal. To remember who he was without the cameras. Because sometimes, to truly see the world, you have to step away from its noise. But the story doesn't end there. Mel came back, and thank God he did. Because out of that silence came The Passion of the Christ, a film that forever altered faith-based cinema. His return wasn't just a comeback, it was a resurrection. Through public battles and personal trials, Mel has become something rare in Hollywood, a symbol of spiritual resilience. He doesn't just speak about faith, he lives it. And when he speaks about God, you can tell it comes from somewhere hard-earned. In one intimate conversation, Mel offered a truth that hits home. God gives, and God takes. We come into this world with nothing, and we leave the same way. That's why, he says, putting God first is the only thing that makes sense. Everything else falls into place after that. The Gospel of Matthew is one of his anchors, especially the verses about how the birds of the air and lilies of the field are cared for without worry. His father would often remind him, "Don't stress about money or stuff." That lesson stayed with him and helped him let go of so much anxiety. From his father, he also learned something even deeper. We're not in control, but God is, and grace is enough. It's this surrender that shapes Mel's daily life, a mix of prayer, reflection, exercise, and stillness. He calls life a high-wire act, a tightrope of self-control, and while it's never easy, it's worth it. Ask him his favorite Bible verse, he'll tell you he can't choose. Because to Mel, every part of Scripture, from the Old Testament to the New, has something urgent to say. And if there's one theme that defines his worldview, it's this. The battle between good and evil is real. It's a war for the soul of humanity, and we're all caught in the crossfire. Imperfect, wounded, searching. But Mel Gibson isn't afraid to ask the big questions. Why are we here? What are we fighting for? Can art become a weapon of truth? His answer isn't finished yet. Because as Mel keeps walking forward in faith, his story isn't over, not even close.